Okay, so I wanted to get this video put together fairly quickly as just this morning Bleach fans over on Reddit posted one of the more recent answers from Kubo's Club Outside Q&A platform, something we have covered numerous times in the past on this channel. That platform is a place for Kubo to answer fan-submitted, long-standing questions about Bleach that normally cover a wide variety of truly interesting topics. Just some of the ones we've looked at on here include the true nature of Yachiru, and why Rukia didn't recognise Isshin despite them living in the same household and serving in the Gotei 13 at the same time. So as you can see, they are normally questions that fans are generally very interested to hear the answers to. And in my opinion, today's latest one is no different. But the question itself is very, very simple and receives an equally simple, frustratingly simple answer. But in my opinion, it's still worth talking about. There's a decent amount to unpack about what this means for the character involved and the race of characters involved as well. And so the question is as follows. If Grimmjow trained enough, if he did enough training, would he be able to attain that legendary Segunda Etapa, the second stage of an Arrancar's release, which seemingly, in the canon manga anyway, only Ulquiorra had access to? And Kubo's answer is just, he can do it. And that's all we get, and it's definitely a little bit frustrating. It feels like such a tantalising tease as to not just Grimmjow's true potential, but the potential of all Arrancar. And so to begin with, let's just go a brief context of Ulquiorra's second release, although of course many of you will already know all of this, but Ulquiorra activates his now legendary Segunda Etapa in his final battle against Ichigo to teach him the meaning of true despair. And Ulquiorra claims that he is the only Arrancar in Aizen's army that has access to this ability, and that even Aizen himself doesn't know that he has attained this level of power. And his second release does look absolutely amazing. It kind of is exactly what I was hoping his release form would look like in general, and I was a tad disappointed with his first form, so this was exactly what I wanted to see. But that notion that he's the only Arrancar to have attained it is a strange one, especially since Kubo now has just kind of come out and said, yeah, Grimmjow can learn it. And what's crucial about this is those two Arrancar are different classes of Arrancar. Ulquiorra is a Vasto Lord, therefore the most powerful, the one with the most potential, while Grimmjow is, although very powerful, only an Adjukas. You know, he's only the second stage of an Arrancar. But the fact that he could learn that second release form would surely push him up the ranks of the Espada enormously. Now, in my opinion, the history of a quote-unquote second release form, as far as the Arrancars go in Bleach, is kind of weird and spotty at best, as a couple of other Arrancar in the series seem to initiate something similar, akin to the Segunda Etapa, but clearly not exactly the same. Even such low-ranking Fraction as characters like Abirama Reda, who initiates a strange transformation where he carves into the insignia on his chest, sprouts additional wings, and sort of evolves. And the same goes for Gio Vega and his resurrection Tigre Stock, when he basically transforms into a hulking different version of himself. It looks markedly different from his original form, but presumably is just an ability of his initial transformation. Then there's characters like Yami Largo, who turns out to be the Zero Espada, and who quite clearly undergoes a totally different transformation during his battle with Byakuya and Kenpachi. However, if training is what's required to attain the Segunda Etapa, I seriously doubt that that's what Yami is doing here. It's more likely that his Zanpakuto era basically allows him to just transform en masse the angrier he becomes, but it's not the same as activating essentially a full second release. And so this is exciting, not just for Grimmjow, but for all of the remaining Arrancar. It's fairly easy to believe that if Grimmjow can make it through his own training, then certainly characters like Neliel and Harabel should both be able to attain a Segunda Etapa as well, presumably pushing them even further beyond Grimmjow's power bracket if all three of them were to attain that same level of power. Although the power level of Segunda Etapa is something I've kind of found very difficult to discern because of the strange and isolated way it's utilised. So obviously Ulquiorra is only fighting Ichigo. Ichigo, generally speaking, is a difficult character to, toss up between who's the strongest because he's often heavily aided by the plot, being the main character and all. But also in this fight, Ulquiorra uses the Segunda Etapa out of principle, not because he has to. He uses it because despite the fact that he is destroying Ichigo, Ichigo will not give up. Ichigo continues to defy him. And so it's difficult to say exactly how powerful this thing is because he demolishes Ichigo and even kills him in his Segunda Etapa, but he was previously demolishing him anyway. So it's really difficult to say exactly how much stronger it made him, especially since he then gets annihilated by Ichigo's transformed, monstrous, hollow, instinctual form. So it's difficult to say exactly what kind of power boost these characters would get, but it's an exciting prospect nonetheless to imagine characters like Grimmjow, like Harabel, having access to this second form, which is something I think fans have fantasized about for years after finding out that it was even possible. Your mind starts to race about what might have been in store for other Espada, especially since the top 3 Espada then came after Ulquiorra, and none of them really displayed anything like that, apart from Yami. To be honest, while I'm not saying Grimmjow has access to his Segunda Etapa in the Thousand Year Blood War, because I don't think he does, I do wonder if there is some kind of hinting or teasing going on in that arc that Grimmjow might be evolving his strength. For example, when he goes up against Askin Naklavar, when he tries to catch the Sternritter, we see him changing his hands, they transform to seemingly resemble Pantera, his Resurrection, but he actually remains in his base form. And so this kind of like half transformation without actually having to release his Zanpakuto always kind of stuck with me as maybe being some kind of a hint being dropped that Grimmjow has perhaps progressed a little further than we might know, but then nothing really came of it. And I can't remember for the life of me, but I'm wondering if maybe that has been brought up recently. I feel like it has been a topic of discussion, that ability of Grimmjow's, that I think most Arrancar apparently can do if they reach a certain power level. I'm not entirely sure if it has. Please let me know in the comments below. But regardless, I do think that's supposed to be a sign, of course, that Grimmjow has become more powerful since the Arrancar arc. And so there's really not an awful lot to say about this Q&A answer. It's a cool one, like I said, and it's really neat to know this, to know that it wasn't something that was just unique to Ulquiorra. And it's interesting as well to think that if Ulquiorra truly was the only Espada to attain this extra stage, and then he kind of like kept it from everybody else, I wonder if he did that consciously, like he didn't want anyone else to know, to kind of know he had that edge, or if it's just something he never got around to telling anybody, or even why he didn't tell Aizen about it, because Ulquiorra is, of course, staunchly loyal to Aizen, so that's a bit strange as well. But what's interesting about it is, if it is training-based, if an Arrancar just does have to train with their powers to attain that form, then how much training did Ulquiorra do? When did he find the time to do this training, and who was he training against? It's obviously Ulquiorra is incredibly powerful. We know he's an Arrancar. He's even, as we've seen in the Nestle Tonight, I think it was, or it was To Be But Be, or something like that. The Ulquiorra past story we find out that he is a natural-born Arrancar, having split his mask himself on some pretty sharp bushes in Waco Mundo. So it's not too far-fetched, I don't think, to think Ulquiorra easily has the potential to attain that, but if potentially any Arrancar can do it, if it doesn't matter about class, then you do have to kind of bring into question just how much training Ulquiorra actually did, and then why he chose to kind of keep it a secret from everybody else. And also there's the logistical factor of how does a Segunda Etapa even really work? It's not really like a Shinigami Zanpakuto at all, where they have those different stages of release. That theoretically shouldn't be a thing with an Arrancar, because they seal essentially their like original essence into a sword and then bring out their original hollow power when they activate their Resurrection. And so you kind of think it's more likely to be a one and done deal. They're bringing everything out at once. So it's potentially Ulquiorra is holding some of that back in his first release, and then in his Segunda Etapa, that's kind of how he actually is, or actually was. I don't really know. It's hard to say regardless. And all we are left with at the end of the day, until Kubo, if he decides to revisit this at all we are left with is speculation. To speculate what Grimmjow's Segunda Etapa would look like, what Harabel's, what Neliel's would look like. Characters who are still alive in things like the light novels, characters like Rudborn, for example, could have a really cool one. Yeah, but then that brings into question, as we mentioned a minute ago with Ulquiorra, potential. Grimmjow clearly has the potential, if he puts in the training, to make it. Does an Arrancar like Rudborn share that? I don't really know. I don't really know any of this. This is all speculation at the end of the day. But that's basically all I have for you. I told you it's a very short video, but I just wanted to kind of get it out there because I think it's a very interesting topic. The topic of Segunda Etapa is one that has been ruminating within the fan base for many years. Ever since Ulquiorra showed off what he can truly do, I think many people hoped that certainly the top 3 Espada might show similar prowess, but they never did. And then Yami, brings into question the weirdness of his second transformation and stuff like that. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think of this, and do you have any ideas in your head for what these Segunda Etapa forms of somebody like Grimmjow, Harabel, or Neliel might actually look like? And if there is a Hell Arc manifesting somewhere out there in the ether, it would be seriously cool to see them duking it out with some denizens of hell in their supposed second form. So that would be awesome to see if it ever did happen. But let me know in the comments below what you think about this news about Grimmjow having a second release form. I'd love to hear your takes, your thoughts and feelings about what everyone else's could look like. But yeah, if you haven't done already, guys, make sure to hit subscribe for more Bleach videos just like this every single week. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, because it does help me and the channel. It gets us more exposure on YouTube. And also don't forget to support me over on Patreon if you want to take the support from me another step further. You can get videos early over there, and you can support me for as little as $1 a month. And everyone who's doing that is coming up on screen right now. As always, I well and truly really appreciate your support. Alright guys, but until next time, I'll catch you later. And I'll see you then.